Mit mir gebeten reden auf Englisch, so itchem aslicho, wird mir reden in English. I ashkeach Rav Greenberg, and I ashkeach to Rabbi Alperovich. I want to start that we have to picture the Deir HaShvi, which is very unique in the iskashrus between Chassidim and the Rebbe. My brother, Rabbi Menachem Groner, who is from the Shliach in Kiryat Gat, so he married an anicle of Rab Mendel Futafas. And Rab Mendel Futafas came to New York in Toshach of Gimel. One time in Kfar Chabad, my brother was in conversation with his wife's grandfather and said, Mistame, when you arrived from Russia, you had a chinuch, a emesech Siddush chinuch in Kremetchuk and in other places, and you came to 770 and you saw the Amerikanske Bochrim, so it was like going into a kindergarten. And Rab Mendel became very, very serious. And he says, no, the Machstatoris, you're making a mistake. The iskashrus that I saw by the Bochrim in 770 is unlike the iskashrus that existed in previous generations. Ubel shoinoi. So it gebrennt a fire von a Rebbe unter Zerefis. And growing up in the Daladamas of 770, and just give you context, my first memory of the Rebbe was going into Yechidus with my brother in Tovshin Yutes for Upshernish. So in the Chofs, there was a rhythm that was there between the Rebbe and the Bochrim in an unbelievable way, with all of Anash, but especially with the Bochrim. And it continued on in the Lamids. So to put that into perspective, to be the night of Shmini Atzeres in 770, and Bechlal that year was a phenomenal year because there was a new minig that the Rebbe started, which we didn't see in previous years. And that was that from the first night of Sukkot, by every tefillah that the Rebbe came in, there was a rikud. And not only before every tefillah, but even a Shana Rabbah, before Tehillim at 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a rikud. Later we realized that all these rikudim combined were sort of to take the place of the rikudim that the Rebbe could not dance with us during the latter part of Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Teda. But there was an unbelievable simcha in 770. Comes the night of Shmini Atzeres, and the Hakafas are going full force, and the Rebbe is working with the crowd, and mitamol, by one of the Negunim, the Rebbe turns very pale and leans on the stender with his elbow and was clapping very, very lightly. And that was the first indicator that something is not going right. I was standing very, very close because I was one of the deputized Vada Mesader. And I saw this so close. What was the deputized? You know, you have some young Bachrim here that are very smart. So I want to tell you something that was very painful with the young Bachrim. They had no chinuch whatsoever. So the first night, Rosh Hashanah, as the Rebbe walked in, there was a tremendous stupenish. And the younger Bachrim, instead of standing to the side, were pushing right behind the Rebbe. And they were pushing so strong that one of the Bachrim, Rachmana Litzlan, hit the Rebbe with his elbow in the Rebbe's back. And the Rebbe went like this. And what resulted after that was a riot. And the riot was that a lot of Bachrim went to the Vada Mesader and said that we need to have a real Seder. And the Vada Mesader said, that's fine, but tonight that you do it in an organized way, so that's how there was a Vada Mesader, and we made an unbelievable Seder. But I have to say that as a result of what happened the first night of Rosh Hashanah, by Motzei Rosh Hashanah, after Havdalah, before Keshel Bracha, there was a huge noise, a huge tumult, a huge rash and people were not yet used to the new Seder. And the Rebbe put his cost down. And he said, Oder sit verna Seder da, an nicht wird man teilen durch a Shliach. And unfortunately, that's what happened on the night of Simchas Torah, that the Rebbe gave the Keshel Bracha to Rav Chodekov, that he should give out the Keshel Bracha because it was after the heart attack. So as a result of being part of the Vada Mesader, there were a whole group of Bachrim. I was standing very close to the Rebbe's bima, and I could see what was going on. I turned to some of the Bachrim that were there, and I said, the Rebbe is nicht gesund, fehlt nicht gut. And they began to yell at me, was redst du solche Narrigkeit? Das ist Apikursis. But I couldn't take it, so I ran to the other side. I saw Shalom Yisrael Chodikov. Meanwhile, the Rebbe turned around to look to my father. And my father was busy making a Seder. So Mayor Harlig started to bang my father on the shoulder. And he said to him, the Rebbe is Zuchdir. So he turned around, and the Rebbe said to him quietly, Eibse dir nicht schwer, bring a bekel avgich. In English, it means if it's not difficult for you, bring a chair immediately. Now, the Rebbe never sat by Hakafis, always stood. In the earlier years, I remember Toshen Chav Daled, the Rebbe turned around and was pashut, engaged with the whole Eilam, but never sat. And over here that the Rebbe should sit was a very big pele. The doctors that were in the crowd ran up. Dr. Winch, who's now in Florida, told my father and Rabbi Benjamin Klein that it's a heart attack. The Rebbe did not want to stop the Hakafis. The Vaile, as Rabbi Alperovich said, there was a big balagan in 770. They started to scream, Allah Ruiz, the Rebbe daf Luft. They started to break all the windows in the Weibershul, but the Rebbe insisted that he should continue the Hakafis. After the Hakafis, the Rebbe walked out of the shul very slowly. I was already upstairs in the Zal. And the heart was gezittert. I can't describe to you enough. We were in a state of total panic. That was the only thing. We're paralyzed with panic. We never imagined that we would see such a thing. And the Rebbe was walking up the steps very slowly, and the Rebbe was very gray. And he gave a look up, and he saw me there, and he wasn't happy that someone was watching him. So I disappeared immediately. And the Rebbe went into his room and slammed the door shut. The Rebbe's sister-in-law came down from the third floor, and she banged. The Rebbe didn't open it first. Then the Rebbe opened, was willst du? And she said, Bedaiga. The Rebbe says, Alts is good. He slammed the door again, but this time my father put his foot by the door, so the door hit his foot, and he kept it a little open. After a while, when the Rebbe saw the door was open, he called him in, and he said he is soon going to want to make Kiddush. He didn't want that the Rebbetzin should be told. But one of the good friends ran to President Street immediately, not knowing this Hira, and a few minutes later, the Rebbetzin comes in. And I remember the Rebbetzin walks in, and she says, Vasi Gishenda, and she walks straight into the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe looked at my father, and my father said he was surprised that she even came. Anyways, the Rebbe said, also zayin beseder, if it's a chopru and a game machen kiddush. So my father asked, muss soll bringen grape juice? And the Rebbe said, kiddush macht man a wine. And the Rebbe walked out of his room to the sukkah very slow. And while he was in the sukkah, Yankel Hecht came in. Rabbi Alperovich mentioned before that in the Balagan, there was a little boy that Nebuch fell from the pyramids, and the Hatzalah was trying to revive him and help him in the Zal upstairs. And they made a decision that they have to take him to the hospital. So there's a whole Elam standing in front of 770. Nobody knows what's going on. The Rebbe hasn't come out to the sukkah yet. They open the ambulance and they run in with the gurney into 770. The Elam started to scream, and this is what Rabbi Alperovich said, mention him in Pasuk Yinum and Chalashin, that Leibel Bestritsky had to make an announcement and say, but the Rebbe, when the Rebbe came into the sukkah, the Rebbe was in a tremendous amount of pain. We saw it because the sukkah door was open. But then the Rebbe said that he would like that everybody should go home to be able to make Kiddush and have Suda Shabbos, unless they want to stay in 770 and dance. I can promise you, keiner hat nicht getanzt jene Nacht, mit gesagt Tilim und mit geweint a ganze Nacht. 5:30 in the morning. So what happened was that there was a doctor in Crown Heights, Dr. Levi Lev, that he had a lot of equipment, and they brought all of his equipment with the EKG and the monitors to 770. And there were doctors that came to see the Rebbe, and they all started to yell that the Rebbe has to go to the hospital. And the Rebbe said he's not going to the hospital, but he allowed that the machine should be attached. 5:30 in the morning was when the second, more damaging heart attack happened. And I can tell you that the doctors jumped with the medicine, and my father went into the Rebbe and told the Rebbe what's going on and asked permission if the Rebbe is allowing that they should treat him. And the Rebbe said yes. And that's where they treated him, and whatever. It took a long time until they were able to stabilize it. The Rebbetzin at that time told my father, as Medav Yisrael Vasatondo. So my father went to Rabbi Chodekov. Rabbi Chodekov didn't go to sleep that night. He was in his room. And Rabbi Chodekov said, Farbrengen Rabbonim. So Chodekov sent my father to ask Rabbonim. My father called the 4 Rabbonim that he saw, Siddush Rabbonim. So he started to tell them what the matzav is. So they started to scream and cry. So he said, Das wird titon avayla später. Yes, darf ich haben a psak din. So 3 ruled that the Rebbe has to go to the hospital. And 1 said no. And my father went back to Chodekov and told him. Chodekov went into the Rebbe's room. Before Rabbi Chodekov had a chance to say anything, the Rebbe said, ihr sollt mir nicht sagen, dass ich gegangen zu Rabbonim, weil ich folge Rabbonim. Und ich will nicht gehen gegen die Rabbonim. Bei mir sollt ihr besser mir nicht sagen. Die Worte gewähren, ich folge Rabbonim. Der Pfarrer sollte mir nicht sagen, was sie gewähren. So my father walked in and said, dass da Asfara machen das Spital da. And the Rebbe was masking. Meanwhile, Rabbi Krinsky was able to connect with Rabbi Schusterman in Chicago, because he remembered that there was a doctor by the name of Dr. Ira Weiss, and they arranged that Ira Weiss should come immediately to 770. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But I want to just add a few things. And that is that b'meshach the day on Shmini Atzeres is given sehr, sehr schwer. I remember my father came out and geheißen, als alle sollen gehen leifen in Schul daven und machen am Mishaberach. Und man soll sich nicht drehen da. So I asked him, the Rebbe went over to the window to see am dreht sich und geheißen nicht gehen. So he burst out crying. And he said, the matzav right now is that the Rebbe says shvach, that he can't even get out from bed. That's why that night, when all of a sudden the Rebbe got up, detached the pieces from his chest, and went around the room, is givoren asimcha gedele. And what Rabbi Alperovich said is correct. They were singing the whole night. What's the given? In middle, they emptied out the first half of 770. And the Rebbe gesagt, ich herr nicht der Keil Simcha. So doch Simchas Teira, für was tanzt mit nicht? So my father said, mir will nicht sterben dem Rebbe von Ruhen. Hat der Rebbe gesagt, verkehrt. Der Rebbe said the opposite. Als was mehr, mir wird singen und tanzen, als mehr wird das meiste sein in die Gesund und der Refuhr. So the message came to 770, am darf tanzen. Haben alle ungeheben tanzen. Haben mit getanzt, mit bittere Tränen. The floor was wet with tears. And they were singing the Rebbe soll sein gesund. There were Chassidim that said that this is a Beis HaCholem, it's a nightmare. And then what happened was, when the Rebbe got up to walk around, the doctors said this was a miracle. Pashat, a miracle. So my brother ran down to Rabbi Yael. And he told Rabbi Yael what happened. That the Rebbe just walked around and the doctors say that it's a miracle. So Rabbi Yael said, you have to announce it. So my brother got up in the bima. Rabbi Yael made everybody quiet. And my brother told everybody what he just heard, that the Rebbe got up and he walked around. So b'meila, they changed it from the Rebbe soll sein gesund to the Rebbe is gesund. And by the way, the ganze Chodesh, kids going to school, on their buses, walking in the street, there was one nigun that you heard constantly, the Rebbe is gesund. I want to share a few other things that happened before Rosh Chodesh Kislev, which was very negeya. One of the things that they did was they blocked off the front of 770, that no one should walk in front of 770, is only Zayin Kintumel. The Allgemeine Journal used to come out once a week, and of course, the big news that week, it was already a week and a half after Simchas Torah, the whole top of the front page was about the Matzah of the Rebbe, written by Gershon Ber Jakobson, Olav HaSholem. And over there, he wrote three things. Number one, he had a picture of the outside of 770, the way it is blocked off. The second thing he said is that the Bochrim have machlit given. The Bochrim decided to learn downstairs in 770 and not in the Zal, so they shouldn't disturb the Rebbe. And the third thing that he wrote is that when the Frierdiker Rebbe had a stroke in Tafshin Hey, the Rebbe was the one that prevented any letters of Agmas Nefesh to go in to the Frierdiker Rebbe, because the Frierdiker Rebbe had a stroke reading a letter of the killing of Rabbi Tzedek Masmid, and they found him clutching that letter. So b'meile, in the article it didn't say that, but it said so nish gedem zayin Agmas Nefesh. Now I have to say that the Seder Hayom then by the Rebbe was, because the Bachrim had mishmeres to guard 770 that no one should come in, only the doctors or certain people that had to come in. My shift was from 3 to 6 in the morning. At 6 o'clock I would go into the Gan Eden Atachten to help my father, and my father would go in to help the Rebbe with the Talis and Tefillin. And after the davening, the Rebbe asked, "Man soll reinbringen den Post und die Zeitung da will es an dem Zeitung." So he sees the newspaper and he reads the article, and he gets up and he walks over to the window and he says, "Man soll schein zunehmen als." That was the first thing. Secondly, he said, "As ich will nicht mehr sein der Kehltäter von den Dalle Dames von Schwer, sollen alle Bochum zurückkommen in den Saal und gleich lernen." And the third thing he said was, "Wir sollen nicht abhalten kein ein Brief. Was für a Brief, was kommt an, any letter that comes in, no one has the right to stop it. It has to go into the Rebbe." Those were the three heroes. And so my father says to me, this is 6:30 in the morning, "You have to get rid of all the benches and chairs. Where am I going to get someone to help me?" So I had a chaver, Mendel Nitkin Olav HaSholem, that lived right next door. So I woke him up, and he came out, and he helped me. But I didn't have the heart to get rid of everything, so I left a little bit. My father comes out, the Rebbe is not happy. He wants to see everything God. So we removed everything. The second thing was that the Bachrim came up. So there was a Bacher Kugel. What's the older one? It's not Shleim. Meisha Kugel. So he went to Kingston Avenue to the material and carpet stores, and he got carpets with glue, and he glued it to the bottom of the benches and the chairs and the tables as the Shemachen Kintumel. And then the letters went in. So this is just an interesting nekuda. Now, Benegea to Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Rabbi Alperovich mentioned before that the Sikha that we just watched from the Rebbe is so masim, where the Rebbe says that the Chodesh Kislev starts with Kes, or Kisei, which is the Indian of Helem, and Dafka through the Helem is this, the Nifgadato, then there's Mamshech the Gilui. And Grade, that is something that the Rebbe said to one of the doctors, I think it was Dr. Ramberg, who came from Cleveland. And then on the night of Simchas Torah, by the Farbrengen, the Rebbe told my father that he should give over this Nekuda to Rabbi Yael, and Rabbi Yael will explain it. So that, you have to understand that even though we saw the Rebbe through the Gadol, but it's sehr stark gefelt, and everybody was very worried. The first day that the Rebbe walked out of 770 was not Rosh Chodesh Kislev, it was Erev Rosh Chodesh Kislev. The Sfarim from the Frierdiker Rebbe's library arrived from Poland, and it was displayed in the Rebbe's library, and the Rebbe walked into the library to see the Sfarim. But that didn't mean that the Rebbe went home. There was a discussion when the Rebbe should go home, and the Rebbe himself suggested that it should be Rosh Chodesh. It wasn't nisparsim, it was only through rumor, but the rumor spread very quickly, and by the time the Rebbe was ready to go home after Maidiv, the entire area around 770 was packed and filled with people. Now, you have to remember that the light in the Rebbe's room was on from Shmini Atzeres till Rosh Chodesh Kislev. They never closed the light. They might have dimmed it, they might have kept it full, but they never closed it. Whenever the Rebbe would go home, what the Rebbe would do was close the light, and you knew that the Rebbe is coming out. My brother told me that one time he was standing with Yankel Hecht in front of the 770 in Kfar Chabad, and somebody was in the Rebbe's room there, and all of a sudden the light closed, and they both jumped in attention. They forgot that they were in Kfar Chabad because the instant reaction was the Rebbe gate. So you didn't see the light. The light closing meant that the Rebbe is coming out. So the whole Elam is standing there, and all of a sudden the Rebbe's light closes. There was such a geshrei from the whole Elam that it's impossible to explain it. And they started Napoleon's march, and all of a sudden the Rebbe comes to the front, and he sees the whole Elam, he stops, and then he gives a smile, and he lifted his left hand, and he began to encourage the singing. He's given a ganze Tanzerei. And there was a whole motorcade for the Rebbe to go home. The Rebbetzin was on the second floor, and the plan was that after the Rebbe goes home, she would quietly go out. But she didn't think that there was going to be all this simcha. She said it reminded her of what was in Tofresh Pei Zayin after the Geula of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And what Rabbi Alperovich said before, the Liebschaft was the Gesehen von the Chassidim, is given der Schreiblach. It was indescribable. Lepeil, here's what happened. And with this, I want to bring it to the end. You have to remember that the heart attack happened in the middle of Hakofes Aldeil Shmini Atzeres. It was by the fifth Hakofeh. So after that, there was no Hakofes anymore. Furthermore, the Rebbe told my father that he wants to make a special announcement that night, and it'll be after the fifth Hakofeh. And he never actually made the announcement. Nobody knows what it was. So the Elam, the Bachrim were the ones that led it, not the Yunga Light. It was the Bachrim. The Bachrim stormed into 770 in the Zal, and they opened up the Aron Kodesh, and they began the Hakofes from the sixth Hakofeh of Shmini Atzeres, the seventh Hakofeh. Then they did all the Hakofes of Simchas Torah night, then Simchas Torah day. Und mir hat getanzt. The building was rocking. Mit geschrien und getanzt. Das ist unser Yud Beis Tammuz. It's our Yud Kislev. It's our Yud Beis Tammuz. And so it's gegossen Mashke l'Reiv. And mir hat getanzt poshet a ganze Nacht. Nobody went to sleep. None of the Bachrim went to sleep that night. And this is given azah simcha, like all the tension that was there from the entire time, from Shmini Atzeres till Rosh Chodesh Kislev, came out in this tremendous joy. Mit hazeh gesungen, and it was without pretense. This is given emes. Until the morning, and it was Rosh Chodesh. It happens to be that the Gadol for that morning was Gan Eden, Gimel Ayin, and since my last name starts with a Gimel, I was zeicher to be there. What happened was we had to take all the mashke out of the zal, the empty bottles, and we put in the Cheder Sheni. All the tables were filled with empty bottles, like it was indescribable. And we got the janitor to wash the floor and make everything clean. And then the Rebbe came in. And the Rebbe was not happy that everybody was looking at him. He told my father, "Me guckt mir an, als ich napsa Sachen am Museum." We looked at the Rebbe because we missed the Rebbe. But then the Jungelite and the Balabatim heard what happened on the night of Rosh Chodesh Kislev, they said, Loma Nigora. And they said, it's only the Bochrim that could be Mesameach. And be Besimcha, we also have to be Besimcha. So they made an announcement Friday night that Shabbos wird sein HaKiddush in Shul, und kein einer hat nicht Rishus heimzugehen. That was the Lashon. No one has Rishus to go. Everybody has to remain. It was a big Kiddush. And Rabbi is given there, and Big Elufin, Yisrael Duchman, and the known characters. And when the Rebbe came out, Motzei Shabbos after Ma'ariv, Larry Resnick was standing near the Rebbe's car, and the Rebbe asked him if he already had a chance to go in the circle of the dancing. So for that, we knew that the Rebbe was makabel the inyan of that inyan of the Simcha. So all I can say, because I've spoken over my time, so the Rebbe helfen vet helfen. As me vet keden, zeiche sein, to have the Simcha on a much greater level, when we will be able to see the Rebbe be'enei basar, there will be no more Helen v'hester, and we will dance and dance and dance in a Eifen Nitzchi, l'chaim l'chaim.